Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny and today we're going to go through the Choose Wisely book tag. I was tagged in this book tag by Letty over at the Eerie Fairy Tales. I will link Letty's channel and the book tag video down below. I will also try and find the original creator of this tag and post that in the description as well. This book tag I actually haven't ever heard of, and I really like the layout of it. So this tag only has 2 prompts, and the first prompt is to choose 3 books that have destroyed you in some way, and then the second prompt is to choose 3 books that have revived you in some way. And I think that's a really interesting way of doing a tag. Not that I dislike the tags that have specific questions, but just to kind of leave an open format and you have to find 3 books that fit a specific prompt. I don't know, I think it's going to be interesting, so let's get started. I'm going to do the 3 books that destroyed me first, and then I will do the 3 books that revived me at the end. I will say that I think the books that destroyed me were a little harder for me to find than the books that revived me. I really had to dig into my Goodreads and my past reading history and really think about how I felt whenever I was reading these books. I don't read a lot of sad emotional books or books that are specifically meant to be, I don't want to say emotionally traumatizing, but like books that are meant to be very emotional. I don't gravitate towards those types of stories, and I know that there are other ways for books to destroy you, but because of the fact that I don't gravitate towards books that are super emotional, I really have to tie it into pieces of the plot that do have emotion, because even if a book isn't meant to be emotional, if it has good character development and a good plot, there are going to be emotional moments and or an emotional conclusion. And so, but it really had me thinking about like the different pieces and different things that happened in the books that I've read. So I actually really like this this book tag. A lot of book tags, it's not as hard for me to find books, and I thought that this one was really challenging. And so yeah, kudos to whoever made this book tag. So the first book that I will mention that destroyed me is Redemptor, which is the second book in the, I don't know if it's called the Rabier duology or if there's another name for that duology, but the first book is Rabier and the second book is Redemptor. And really both of these books are hard-hitting, but I really found the ending of the series to be, it destroyed me. It's in a good way. I absolutely would recommend these books, and I think that it is even a one-up that these books are on this list for me, because this is a YA series, and YA is not really in my heart anymore. I have not found very many YA books this year that I have enjoyed, and so I really appreciate when I do find one that, hits me in my heart. So if you haven't read, I'm not going to give you guys the synopsis of Redemptor because it is the second book in the series, but I will talk about Rabier. So Rabier, you follow Tarisai, who is a girl who is raised kind of in isolation, and she longs for her mother, who comes in and out of the picture. She's raised by people who fear her and fear her mother, definitely, and so she definitely is isolated and longs for family and people to care about her. And her mother puts her in a situation where she is to leave her home and go out into, I don't remember if he is the king or the emperor, but it is a political story. So she gets implanted into their kingdom's hierarchy, and she is going through like games to essentially become one of the, we'll call him the emperor, the emperor's like guard or like trusted advisors, and in order to do that you have to create like a bond with this person. And so her mother sends her on this quest. However, her mother has some form of power over her, and her mom sends her on this quest to gain this person's trust and essentially setting Tarisai up to create this bond with this person and then kill them. That's the whole purpose of her being sent out into the kingdom. And the amount of devastation that Tarisai has to go through and mental turmoil in fighting against this wish of her mother, but also internalizing the fact that she's always wanted a family. And does she get that family through her mother, or does she get that family through these new people that come into her life in her storyline? It's just, the story is amazing. The next book that destroyed me was Kaikeyi, which I have talked about recently on my channel on my Fantasy Standalones video, but I still think it warrants getting mentioned in this book tag. Kaikeyi, you follow a young girl who is a princess, and she is, I think, the youngest in her family and has a couple of older brothers. And she is raised originally as someone who has a lot of privilege and does not really see what royalty can potentially mean for people, like the fact that it's a little bit imprisoning in its own way because they have like certain demands upon them as being royalty. And then she starts to see, as things happen in her life, her mother ends up getting banished from the kingdom, so she ends up having to take on a lot of responsibility that like a matriarch would. And then she marriage is introduced into the story, and she essentially gets forced into marriage that she doesn't really want. And she is in a society that is ruled by men and the gods in her world, and she doesn't want other people to make decisions for her. It also has a magic system in it. She has a type of magic that she can like she can manipulate the emotional bond between herself and others. And so she has to navigate that. And the entire story, it's based off of some mythology, and she is, in the mythology, she's kind of like a vilified queen. And you get to see why she makes the choices that she makes in her life and the legacy that she chooses to leave, and why she chooses to lead them. And so the reason I'm saying that this book destroyed me is because as you're seeing her make these decisions, they're devastating to her and sometimes to those around her. And as you get to see her perspective of why certain decisions were made, it just makes you hurt for her, because in some of the decisions that are made for her or that she makes herself, there isn't a good outcome for everyone. Someone always loses. And to see that impact on her life and the lives around her was just really heartbreaking to read about. It's an amazing story. If you haven't picked up Kaikeyi and you like mythology, I would definitely say give it a try. Next on this list is one that I'm stretching a little bit as far as it destroying me, and that is You Let Me In. This book, the reason I'm saying it destroyed me is because the ending of this book is absolutely, I mean, chef's kiss. It was fantastic. It makes you think, and it broke my brain a little bit. So that's why I'm saying this destroyed me, because you get to the end and it's not tied up in a perfect little bow, and it's very much putting things back on you as a reader to try and figure out what you really believe. And I just absolutely ate it up. It was fantastic. If you haven't heard me talk about this, I haven't talked about it recently on my channel. This was, I think, one of the very first horror reads that I picked up. This is, I think, thriller horror. But you follow the life of an author who has gone missing and has been missing for so long that eventually the estate, or the state essentially has decided that she's dead. They pronounce her dead because she's been missing so long. And so her estate and the inheritance of everything that she owns gets taken up by lawyers, and I think it's her niece and her nephew get called in, and they are told that they will inherit everything, her property, her money, everything that she had, but they have to go to her log cabin out in the middle of the woods and read her last manuscript. And the last manuscript that they go and read is her story written by her. So they get to see why she's made some of the really eccentric decisions that she has in her life. There is a mystery in the book that there's like a murder in the book, and you're not sure if she is the one who committed it. There are odd things that have happened around her entire life that you don't like. Some people believe that she is the cause behind it. Some people believe that she's not. And her manuscript explains her perspective of what happened. And you have to decide at the end of the book which perspective to believe. And it's absolutely fantastic. It's very creepy. There are some creatures in the book that you get introduced to that are very dangerous and dark. And I really enjoyed it. On to the books that revived me. So the first one is going to be Paladins' Strength, which is the second book in the Saints of Steel series. So even though this is the second in the series, this series it's all set in the same world, and so there is a mystery going on, but each book follows a different couple. So it's a fantasy romance / horror as well. And in this book, you follow Istvan and Clara. Istvan is a paladin. I believe, as far as the 3 books that are published right now, all 3 of the men or the male characters in the books are paladins they're paladins of the Saint of Steel, and the Saint of Steel has passed, which is very devastating to any of their paladins. And so they have had a very hard time in life. They are isolated from society, kind of ostracized, because they become dangerous because they no longer have a god to quell some of their powers that they have been given by the god. And so you follow Istvan, and then Clara is a nun who has lost her nunnery, her coven. She's lost the rest of the nuns that she used to live with. They have been taken, and she has taken it upon herself to track them down and rescue this coven of nuns. And they meet up and travel together because their quests kind of go in the same place. The paladins are researching and trying to figure out this weird mystery going on in the land where people are becoming killed. They're having their heads chopped off, and then I'll leave it at that because I don't want to give away too much of that mystery. The reason I say that this book is reviving, even though it has so many dark things in it, is because the humor between these 2 individuals was so life-bringing to the story. This world that Kingfisher has built in the Saints of Steel is very grungy and dirty and bleak for the people involved. And the fact that these 2 can have quirky, awkward conversations, but also poke fun at each other throughout the entire book was just lovely to see. This is absolutely my favorite in the series. I've read all 3 so far, and I think that the 4th one is getting published in 2024, which I'm really excited about. And so I can't wait to continue on with the antics. So far in the series, we have not repeated couples, but there have been in the 3rd book, there were some characters from the past books that did end up popping back up. So I'm hoping that as the story continues, as this series continues, we get to see more from Istvan and Clara because their relationship is just fantastic. The next book that I would say revived me was The Slow Regard of Silent Things by Patrick Rothfuss. So this is one of the novellas that is in the Kingkiller Chronicles. And in this, you follow Ari, who is one of the side characters you learn about in the first book. And Ari lives in I think they call it the under thing, but it's kind of like the sewers, the tunnels underneath a university in the book. And Ari has been traumatized. There are some things in her mental health that she has had to deal with that have in a way broken her. And so she lives very isolated from the world. And this book, you follow her, I think it's a week of time that you follow. And you just follow her regarding like her life, and you get to live in her head. And it's so slow, but I just think it's lovely. Like you get to live inside her brain. Nothing really happens. I would definitely say that this is not a book that if you are a plot-driven reader, you should not read this because there's not a lot of plot. But you get to see how she regards things and how she how her brain works. There's a moment in this book where she finds a cogwheel that has a crack in it, and she decides to display it in her living area. And she goes through this whole process in her mind of why she thinks it's beautiful and why she's chosen to display it the way that she did. And I think a lot of people, this is not going to be a lot of people's cup of tea, but the fact that it was so slow and it was just focusing on kind of the beauty of things around and the beauty of relationships with the world around you I just think it's reviving. The last book on my revived list is actually the one that I most recently finished, and that is Heir of Novron. So I am reading this for one of my bucket list-a-thon goals of finishing series, and so this is the third and final book in the Heir Revelations, and I am excited that I finally gotten to the end. I'm a little sad that it's done, but this book, it is the final book, so I won't tell you guys about the plot, but the fact that this whole series follows these two men, Hadrian and Royce, and their relationship with one another within these quests that are happening in this larger kingdom, I found the relationship between these two very refreshing. First off, there are not very many books that I have read that have a relationship between two men, a friendship between two men that is explored. That is something that typically is explored between like a man and a woman or two females. But I have not read many that have this depth of a relationship or a friendship between two men. There are obviously other books that I've read that have male friendships, but not to the extent that this one did. And I also think not only with the relationship aside, so that is like by far the reason that I put this on this list. I think that it was just lovely seeing these two men, burly men, fighters, and kind of in a grungy society that have so much love for one another. Maybe not always expressing it, but you can see by their actions that they have grown to love each other over these years of travel with one another. But I also think that this book is reviving because there are so many books that I've read recently, not that I didn't enjoy them, but that leave certain things unanswered. And I'm okay with questions in a book. Obviously, one of the books, the You Let Me In book that I just talked about that destroyed me, I really enjoyed that ending because I didn't have all the answers, but that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like things in the plot that I have questions over that I feel like should be answered or at least clarified, and it seems like sometimes things, especially in chonky books, go kind of by the wayside. And I had so many times in this series where I would ask a question in my head, like I'd be reading, I'm like, well, why did that happen the way that it did? Or something would pop up in my head, chapters later and be like, oh yeah, that did happen. Why did that happen that way? And it eventually gets answered in the best way in this series. Specifically in this third one, there are a lot of questions that you have throughout the entire series that get brought up about this kingdom and the prophecy of this kingdom that eventually get answered in the third book. And it was just so good. I absolutely love this series. I just purchased, so I have the first one already. I got this at a half-price bookstore, and I have not been able to find the other two, and I went ahead and bought the other two just because I want to reread this, and I want to annotate it and go through the story again because I just absolutely love the world, and I love Royce and Hadrian. They're amazing. So that is the Choose Wisely book tag. I would like to see Nell from Nell Diamond do this tag. I would also like to see Jolene over at Bookworm Adventure Girl do this tag, and Brittany from Brittany Loves Reading. I will tag all of their channels down below. You guys should definitely go check them out. And any of you, if you would like to do this tag and you have your own channel, please do so. If you don't have your own channel but you would still like to answer the prompts, answer them in the comments down below. I would love to hear what your answers are for these two. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a lot of fun. And lastly, thank you, Letty, for tagging me in this. I did have a blast figuring out what my answers were for these two prompts. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.